Don't call black people black. Well, when I first saw this comment, I thought you're American, but I've looked in your profile, it says you're Nigerian. So cool. Hello to Nigeria. As you know, in that video, we were hanging out with some of the Nigerians, some Botswanans, and there's quite a few African people here in Russia. Got another friend here. He's freshly here, about a month or two from Uganda. You'll see in some of the videos we jokingly call him Prince William. And, you know, we all get along here. It's all cool, man. And I get what you're saying. There's no black, there's no white, but there is. Not in a separation type sense, but as a descriptive thing. It's like saying there's no blonde haired woman or no brunette haired woman. It can be a descriptive adjective. Unfortunately, humans have turned it into something else. And there's a big difference in how Americans see race than the rest of the world. And actually, we were discussing that at that dinner. We came into the discussion and it was pretty interesting because some of the people there had been to the US and one of the gentlemen had not. And so his views, he didn't quite understand how America saw racism. And so the rest of us, including the people from Africa, had to explain it. So it's just a descriptive term. And the reason I brought it up in that video is it wasn't even relative to the video itself. The reason I brought it up though is because I get so many questions from commenters like, oh, there's no black people in Russia and Russia hates black people, when it's the exact opposite. If you talk to black people who live in Russia, they will tell you it's way better than the US for a black person here. And I can't say that there's no racism whatsoever, but the racism that does exist here is more towards what they call black Russians or people from the Southern Caucasus, not people from Africa. My African friends here, and they're from all different parts of Africa, everyone that I've talked to said they were amazed at how little racism they encounter here. And you can ask them yourselves. I've done videos with them. There's plenty of Nigerians here, plenty of others. But my experience living in the Caribbean too. So I'm a national of St. Kitts and Nevis. You can see I've got the banner right here. Okay. St. Kitts and Nevis is 90% African descent, Caribbean African now, 5% Indian and 5% other, which includes, white people and so forth. And the terminologies down there are different. In the Caribbean, at least in the West Indies, at least within St. Kitts and the West Indies and the West Indian tend to be a related population, is they don't really use the terms black or white there. If you say black or white, they know who you're talking about. There's plenty of Americans there. But within St. Kitts Nevis, it's not really the term that's used. They will call you dark, light, or clear. So white people, they call clear people. And then if you're really dark skinned, you'd be dark. And if you're fair skinned but black, you'd be light. And so they don't see black and white. They actually see shades of different forms of black. In fact, I wasn't even called clear because I've been spending a lot of time inside and it's winter here, but I typically tan. You can even see now I'm spending in time. I'm a bit darker than most white people are. So they used to call me red, and they would actually come into different places and they would say, where's the red man? And they met me. It wasn't derogatory. And the level of racism in St. Kitts and Nevis is really, really low, which is one of the reasons we really liked it. Even like when my kids were in school there. And I mean, I have kids born and raised in St. Kitts. So you can pick them out in the school pictures because, it's like all the black kids, a couple brown kids from Indian descent, and then boom, my kid. But they never felt any problems one way or the other. And we had lots of other nationalities there. And so American view of racism is just so completely different than the rest of the world. And most Americans don't understand it. And a lot of the rest of the world is really puzzled by the American form of discrimination, racism, black versus white, or however you want to see it. And they just don't see it. But here, calling a black person is not derogatory whatsoever. And the people I was with there, especially the host of the place, I've only known him maybe 4 or 5 months, but I consider him to be a pretty good friend by now. And the other people, some of them might have met casually before. And we were all just having fun. Nobody was offended at that party whatsoever. And it's funny to see that people on Facebook were taking offense for them when they didn't know. I mean, would you prefer just, hey, Africans are here, black people are here? If I said dark people here, that would definitely upset people. But in the Caribbean, that would be the acceptable term. I would have had to say, oh, there's dark people here. And that's I know it sounds strange, but in the Caribbean, at least in the West Indies, that's what they use themselves. They will tell you, I'm a dark person, I'm a light person, or I'm a clear person. But in the end, yeah, we all believe the same color. I agree. And when people say they don't see color, I don't think that's fair. I think everybody sees color, but it's whether or not you really take notice of it. For me, it's like, because I've lived in 12 countries, I've lived in Muslim countries, Christian countries, countries where I've been the minority, countries where I've been the majority. And to me, skin color is like, oh, I see a blonde woman or I see a brunette woman, It doesn't matter to me what color their hair is, but it is a descriptive feature. Just as if I say, hey, I saw a man today or I saw a woman today. It's a descriptive feature, and that's all it is for me at all. Because again, in St. Kitts Nevis, it was 90% African descent. And then a lot of Americans you should call them African American. But think about that. Do you think that the black people in Russia coming from Africa are African Americans? So you say, oh, don't call them black. We're supposed to call them African Americans. And that's often the response, which again is a very American centric response. It's just ridiculous. So the general term outside of the US is, black people. And most of them are just fine with that. In fact, I can't repeat the Russian term for it because the Russian term, the English analog is considered very bad. It's actually the N word. But in Russian, it's not meant to be derogatory, but it is the Russian word for black people. And they use it, and black people here are accustomed to it, and they know the difference. They know that, if it's being said by an English person in America, it has one connotation. But if it's being said by somebody in Russia, that's just the Russian term for that color. It doesn't have the same connotations. Remember, Russia never had slavery, African slavery. They never brought in African slaves. And in fact, in many of the comments people brought up, Pushkin himself was half black. And most people outside of Russia, they know, oh, Pushkin, okay, but you don't understand how important Pushkin is. Pushkin is like the George Washington here. Now, he was never the president, but Pushkin basically, not only was he a famous poet and famous author and so forth, but he basically invented the modern Russian language. There are statues of Pushkin everywhere here. So Pushkin to a Russian is probably bigger than George Washington is or Abraham Lincoln is to an American. He is a huge, colossal figure. And all Russians know that he was half black, and there's no problem with it. They don't hide it. They don't say anything derogatory about it. In fact, it's celebrated even that, dude was half black.